This episode of Now This Is Lit is brought to you by Audible. Check the link in the description to get your first Star Wars audiobook free. Everyone loves free things. Click that link. Do it. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. You're listening to Now This Is Lit, a podcast about Star Wars books, the people who make them, and the readers who just can't get enough of them. I'm your host, Meg Dowell. I use she, her pronouns. And you heard my review of Star Wars Essays Exploring a Galaxy Far, Far Away a few weeks ago. And now we're circling back to that book. Again, I can't believe I just said circling back. It's fine. We're reviewing that book again, but this time it's an interview with the editors responsible for making the book happen. It's going to be great. I know that because the interview already happened and now I get to share it with you, which is so cool. I hope you enjoy. All right, we're going to start with super easy questions. Sure, maybe. This podcast is about Star Wars books. But it's also about the people who participate in the making of Star Wars books. The people are just as important as the books themselves. So let's talk about both of you, because everyone has their own kind of story in terms of how they got into fandom or how their fandom is kind of shaped where they've ended up and how they've gotten to the point where now they're here doing book things, which is so exciting. So why don't you both tell me a little bit about your Star Wars journeys in particular.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm Amy H. Sturgis, and I'm one of the original Star Wars fans. I was in love with Star Trek when I was very, very, very young. I was watching the original series in reruns and the animated series in its original run. And because I was such a fan, I could then convince my parents. I already loved space stuff. I was a big enough girl to get to go see Star Wars in movie theaters. And so fortunately, they took me not once, but 6 times. And that blew my little 5-year-old mind. I was a Star Wars fan for life. And so I grew up with Star Wars, and by my teen years, I had the good fortune of having a great science fiction and comic book store in my hometown. Shout out to Starbase 21 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they had an annual con, a science fiction convention. And so I started going to that con and then other cons. And so I learned about fandom and fan fiction and fan art and fan film. And that became a part of my life. And eventually I went on to graduate school and I was very interested in history. And I got my PhD in intellectual history, which is the history of ideas. And it's very natural then to focus on science fiction, where the ideas are the heroes. And so I've had the great privilege of being able to mix my fandom with my scholarship, with my teaching. I get to teach undergraduate and graduate level courses on Star Wars. And it's been a part of my life forever. So this was a great treat to get to be involved with this particular anthology and to get to work with Emily on it.
And I am Emily, and I have a far more recent relationship with Star Wars. And that is because I was just never a science fiction fantasy type person. Space opera growing up, we read and enjoyed films and things like that, but we just didn't kind of venture into those sorts of stories. And I really came to that sort of brand of literature through Harry Potter. And so I started reading Harry Potter a few years after it came out and really, really enjoyed it, really enjoyed the kind of religious undertones of it, because I'm a lifelong religious person and I'm a religious scholar. And so I started really seeking opportunities to engage with Harry Potter, and then that led me to Tolkien. And I know that's a sin for some Tolkien people to say you came to Harry Potter and then went to Tolkien, but It's just the way things are. So, so then I started taking courses at Signum University, and with Amy Sturgis, her Harry Potter course, which was wonderfully inspiring to me. And then when they were going to offer a course on Star Wars, also taught by Amy Sturgis in 2015, I said, I think maybe I'll do this. I think maybe I'll do this. I don't know if I'll like Star Wars, but so now it's become my favorite, and it has led me into so many different new facets of existence that I wasn't aware of before. I am now a member of the Rebel Legion and the 501st costuming organizations, and there's a lot of collectors. I'm not a collector yet. I don't like dusting. So I don't collect things because it's just like more things to dust. So I like other people's collections. I like to stare at other people's collections. I'm looking at Meg's right now. And so I'm still learning about all that stuff, but it's been a great journey, and Amy has really been my guide throughout it. So she is, because of her wonderful long-term fandom, she helps new fans like myself feel like they can get the backstory before we dive in. So
I love that Star Wars courses exist. And I love that you get to teach them, and I love that other people get to take them. I didn't know that was a thing. And I am amazed and delighted.
Graduate level course. Yeah.
So amazing.
Yeah. Really is. And I will say that the chapter that I contributed to the book comes from the coursework that I did for that course, comes from a paper that I wrote and a presentation I gave for the course. Yeah.
I love that. I also think it's so interesting always people's different like paths to becoming Star Wars fans, more than just like in a casual way, because you have like your collectors. Don't become a collector if you don't want to. No one should force you. And I'm staring through my own screen back at everything that I have to maintain. I did this to myself. But you have so many different segments within the fandom, and anyone can be like deeply passionate about any or multiple of those things. And there are people who have been fans forever, and I especially love the people who have not been fans forever, and they're like random means of just falling into the fandom, and they didn't mean to, but now they're stuck with us. So glad you're here.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So, love saying this title because it's so long, but I love it. Star Wars, Essays Exploring a Galaxy Far, Far Away. I promise I will only say it once. We'll just call it Essays for the rest of the recording. Sure. I don't know what's happening. This collection of essays is delightful. Congratulations for it being out in the world. It's been out for a while, but listen, we get to things when we get to them, and it is never too late to celebrate a book. I'm just now reading I just started the New Jedi Order series, which came out over 20 years ago, and I knew the major event that happens in that book, and I still got to it, and I still cried, so it's never too late.
That's right.
Yeah, that's great. And I think books, especially academic books, they don't go cold for a while.
No,
in fact, sometimes I'll find an academic book from like the 90s, and I'm like, I didn't even know this existed. And it's like, oh my gosh, this has got so many good insights, so yeah, totally fine.
This is a unique book compared to the books we've talked about on the show before, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it, because there are so many different ways to approach Star Wars storytelling, analyzing Star Wars, all of that, and any kind of book that can successfully do that. We want to talk about it, and that's why we're here. And I'm so glad, by the way, that you're both here to talk to me about it, because I had so much fun reading it, and I had so much fun reviewing it, and I was like, I'm nobody, but they want to talk to me about this book anyway, and here we are, and we're having a great time.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
So we don't have to go into too much detail depending on how much you want to talk about it. You may not want to, who knows? But for those who are kind of not familiar with a more academic approach to Star Wars publishing, so this book is out in the world. Wonderful. And I need more people to read it because it's great. But it had to be made. And a lot, I'm sure, went into that process. So when you're going to make a book like this, how does that happen? Where kind of does that start, and how does it kind of all come together to become the book that we have now?
Well, yeah. So I can tell you maybe the normal way that these books happen, and then I can tell you how our book happened,
Yes,
which is
I love it.
less normal. So usually people who either teach at universities or have a higher degree, have some qualification, would draw up a proposal to submit to a publisher. And sometimes that's at the publisher's request, and then other times that's just kind of like a submission. And most publishers, especially academic publishers, all publishers, I think, probably have some information on their websites as to how to submit a proposal. They want books. They don't want to have to come up with all the ideas themselves. They want people to, propose books that sound really good that they would want to publish. So that's just a kind of a process. It's kind of a lot of paperwork, to be honest, and a lot of kind of gathering information. They'll ask you things like, what are other books that are like this out there, and how would yours be different from it, and stuff like that. What was your proposed table of contents? What are going to be the main themes? Who's going to be the target audience for this book? So they want to have all that stuff in place, and then they either accept a proposal or they don't. And then in our case, I wasn't really looking to do a book or two, but I was approached by Vernon Press, our publisher, by an acquisitions editor after I had given a talk about midichlorians at an academic conference, a Southwest Popular American Culture conference. It was online, and so I gave this little, I didn't think much about it. I thought I do this stuff all the time, and then I get this email. I'm like, hey, you want to submit a proposal for this, for a book collection? And they also helped us do, for an academic collection like this is a collection of essays, you do a call for papers, CFP, and you kind of send out into the world this kind of notice that you're going to do a book and it's going to have these themes, and you're looking for people to write, the individual component parts, the essays that are going to go within them, and they're going to be edited by a set of editors, in this case, Amy and me. And so Vernon helped us with that and everything. And so then it's just, Amy, you want to talk about the process from there?
Yes, originally the invitation was for a combined volume on Star Wars and Star Trek, because that was the panel that Emily had presented on. And so we put out the call for papers for both in a book that would be about both. And once we got the responses back from scholars from different disciplines, very different training, different tools they're bringing to these works from all over the world, we realized we didn't have one book, we had two. And so fortunately, Vernon Press agreed with us. And so we have a sister volume here, a sibling, Star Trek Essays Exploring the Final Frontier, that is a companion volume there. But we wanted to focus on the works that we thought were saying something new. When we were looking at the proposals, we wanted to have a wide variety of voices represented, but also voices that contributed something that hadn't been deeply discussed before or could be discussed in a new way. And so we let the themes of the book emerge from the proposals that we found to be most compelling. And we were so fortunate in finding people who were looking at Star Wars from all of these different directions, some of them very close reading, right? Using a microscope to unlock Star Wars. And some of them were using a wide angle lens and looking at decades and decades of Star Wars and its history and how it's evolved. And that's what we wanted to. We wanted to balance that, because one of the challenges in a work like this is saying we have decades of Star Wars storytelling, multimedia storytelling, not just films, not just series, but comics and games and novels. And we want to honor all the ways Star Wars has been discussed and how Star Wars stories have been shared with audiences, and fan participation too, and how fan creators have added to Star Wars. And so we were really fortunate to get a lovely mix of proposals that then covered a lot of different bases. And so after that, the process of writing the works and editing the works, and one of the little secrets of academic publishing is there's an extra step in there of blind peer review, where the editors seek out experts from different fields to blindly read a particular essay and comment on it, how it stacks up to the norms in that particular discipline, and that it's, make sure it's engaging with all the important conversations that need to happen and meeting the highest possible standard. And so that happens as well. And then there's revision if it's necessary. And so that's a long process of back and forth with authors and with peer reviewers and as editors. But it all came through, I think, that we were sharing a kind of common vision and a common love of this work, and wanting to take it seriously, and wanting to invite readers into this larger conversation, not just other scholars, but also fans, anybody, students, professors, teachers, anyone who's interested in Star Wars. We wanted to feel like, they were invited into this, that it was accessible, and that there was no barrier to join in on this. And so it was a fantastic experience all the way around.
Yes, I will highlight the phrase back and forth, because there was a lot of back and forth. Every time I sit at my, how like Google suggests things to you and it's like always like, oh, do you want to write an email to Amy H. Sturgis? Like, how did you know? How did you know?
I love talking on this show about not just the books themselves, but kind of like the process that goes on behind the pages, so to speak, because a lot of people don't talk about that, and a lot of people don't realize how much actually goes into any book or different kinds of books, like who's involved, what are the steps, and this one had a lot of steps, and I'm so glad that after all of that back and forth, you did the thing is here.
Thank you.
It's amazing to hold in your hands. It's like, oh my gosh, this is just, it used to be so many thousands of emails. Now it's a book.
It's a whole book. Oh, and we need more people to read it. I didn't see enough people talking about this book when it came out, and here we are again, and we need to talk about it. If you were to tell someone in 1 or 2 sentences, more if you need to, why they should check out this book for themselves, what would you say?
That's a toughie. I'll make a start. Being an extrovert, I'll make a start, and I'll pass it to Amy, so she's had some time to think.
Thank you. We work so well together. Can you tell?
I know.
You know me so well.
Yes, indeed. I think that this book is going to really appeal to anybody who just wants to go deeper into Star Wars. And so a lot of people, I have a lot of friends who, and I'm obviously both a Star Wars and a Star Trek fan, as well as a Harry Potter fan, as well as a few other things, and I have people who know I like to go deep into these stories. They'll send me like YouTube videos, listen to this, what this guy says, or what this person says about card or whatever, So a lot of times, for a while, I did click on those and I watched them, and I thought, I didn't really, so there are some really insightful stuff out there going on blogs, YouTube, a lot of insightful stuff. some of which is very much cited in this book. But sometimes what I get from those sorts of media is that they're trying to figure out what comes next. You know, they're trying to unravel the story, the plot, and kind of be the first one there, you know. And that's not really what we're doing in this book. Because first of all, like as soon as you do that, like then you can just you move on and your work is now irrelevant because it's already, you know, it's unfolded, you know, probably not exactly how you predicted. But the writings in this book really try to drill down into what it all means, not necessarily what happened or what's going to happen or what the next series is going to do, but rather what it all means. And in so doing, sometimes you actually can rather accurately predict what comes next. What the biggest challenge, I think, for this volume was in the final stages before it was going to go to, you know, actual press and be made into a physical book. We were still digesting things that happened in the Book of Boba Fett and things that happened in Andor. Oh, Andor. And things that happened in in the third season of The Mandalorian. So it became a challenge to then go to the authors and say, oh, there's this thing, and you talked about this, and then it happened, and you should say that. You should add a line or add a footnote or add a something, you know. So there was a lot of 11th hour back and forth to try to capture that. So I think this book is really going to be an attractive book to anybody who just feels like, you know, maybe all of the hot takes aren't really scratching the itch to take their love of Star Wars a little deeper, a little further, a little more thematically, and help answer the question of what it means to be human and what it means, you know, to live in society, and what it means to think about environmental issues, what it means to think about, you know, race and gender issues, and, you know, all these things. And so I guess that's my quick take. Amy, what about you?
It was great. That was brilliant. I would say it is, as someone who's been here since 77 loving Star Wars, it is such an amazing time right now to care about Star Wars and take it seriously. And that's means it's also a wonderful time to get a mental map that says, X, you are here. Here's how you got here. Here's the landscape all around you. What does it mean to be a part of Star Wars right now? And I think this work helps answer that question by saying Star Wars is film and it's television and it's 1977 and it's 2023 and it's novels and it's comics and it's games, and it's games shown in Star Wars, it's games played by fans, it's the community that fans are making and the meaning in the community that fans are making. And here's what a philosopher would say about that, and here's what a linguist would say about that, and here's what a theologian would say about that, and, you know, here's what someone who's asking what is canon and what does that even mean would say about that. And so to have a whole bunch of different voices saying, you love it here, and guess what? This is where you are. Here's the map all around you. All of these different ways to think about where we are and why we're so lucky to be here right now, engaged in Star Wars. And maybe there's something you haven't thought about before. Maybe there's a question that's asked here by someone coming from a different direction, or someone putting together things you hadn't thought of as connected thematically or symbolically or linguistically. And suddenly that's going to invite you to join in the conversation too. That's our hope.
I said at the beginning of this that I wasn't going to ask you hard questions. And that was kind of a hard question, but those were great answers. We did it. I hope that everyone listening is like, must go read a book now, because number one, that's the hope with all of these things. And two, because it's just good for all of the reasons you both mentioned, and so many more that, you know, I hope many more people talk about. So thank you for that. And thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about this book. We could talk about it forever and ever and ever, and maybe we will again. Is there anything that you're working on that you want to plug, or anywhere you want to be found on the internet, anything like that before we go?
Well, thank you very much for having us. This was delightful. And yes, we also agree that people should rush out and buy the book, although people should know that it's priced. The market for academic textbooks in their first run is usually academic institutions and libraries. And so it's priced in that way. But I don't know, Amy, and maybe I shouldn't even say this publicly, but I'm kind of hoping there'll be a paperback version someday that might be more affordable. So keep your eye on that. But another alternative would be to ask your local academic or public library to order it. And a lot of times libraries do have the budget for those things, and they can order even an e-copy that might be easier for you to access. So I am kind of trying to hone all my public presence into my website, which is emilystrand.com. I am on that one website that used to be called Twitter, is now, I don't know, called 10 or something like that. At EKC Strand, although I've been rather neglectful of it lately. But yes, emilystrand.com is probably the best place to go to connect with me. I am currently copy editing another anthology, scholarly anthology, this time on Harry Potter for our podcast, Potterversity. So I am also co-host of the Harry Potter Studies podcast, Potterversity. So you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. I have one other podcast. It's about history of music in the Catholic Church in the 20th century, and it's called Meet Father Rivers. So if those sorts of things interest you, check us out anywhere podcasts are found.
And I am amyhsturgis.com, and there are links there to all my socials, Mastodon and Tumblr and those fun places. And so please check that out. And I also contribute the Looking Back on Genre History segment to the Starship Sofa science fiction podcast. And if you go to my website, there's also a list of those segments with sort of an index to the topics. And I've done quite a few Star Wars topics over the years that I've been with Starship Sofa. So you can look those up, and there's links there as well. So I hope you will check us out. And also, I'd like to just agree with Emily there. If you want to support the book, also definitely requesting the book through the library helps us tremendously and does move us toward hopefully getting more copies out there and in more media, in more formats. So, but we are really grateful. Thank you so much for helping to share the word and with your review and with this podcast episode. It's been lovely to talk to you.
It's been so fun. And if it helps, I did check, and some of the places that you may normally get books, it does look like the price has gone down a little bit, at least for now. So there's hope. But definitely request that book with your library, and we'll see. Get that paperback.
Hope so.
Thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is fun.
Now This Is Lit is part of the Faraway Fandom Network. It is produced by Devor Mondum and written, hosted, and edited by me. Jose Jimenez designed our podcast art. You can keep up with the show through our Substack at starwarslitpod.substack.com. And you can find the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can support the show with all the links in the description, whether it's to bookshop.org or to your free or to starting your free Audible trial. You can subscribe to the Substack if you want to. You don't have to, but you can. You don't have to support the show at all, but you're already listening, so that's great. Also, for more book reviews and Star Wars Book Celebration, follow Star Wars Book Reviews on Instagram.